Welcome to the podcast entitled Health and Wellness Briefs, Tactics for a Better You. I'm Dr. Megan Amaya, Associate Clinical Professor and Director of Health Promotion and Wellness at The Ohio State University. This podcast series is brought to you by Buckeye Wellness in the Office of the Chief Wellness Officer to provide you with evidence-based micro-learning modules to optimize your personal health and well-being. Our podcast starts by giving gratitude to someone or something in your life. Gratitude is one of the simplest research-based strategies to improve your health, happiness, and well-being. Please take a few moments right now to think about who or what you are grateful for today. I'm joined by Dena Champion, lead dietitian for the James Comprehensive Cancer Center at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Dena is a certified specialist in oncology nutrition, as well as a certified nutrition support clinician. Before we get into our topic for today, which is healthy eating and nutrition for active individuals, I want to explain what I mean by active individuals. As we head into the warmer months, especially here in the north, people go outside more, we become more active, maybe join an outdoor sporting league, a club, walking more, hiking more, all sorts of activities. The purpose for the conversation with Dena is to provide ideas and strategy to anyone who really has an existing exercise program or is new and beginning a new exercise program. So it's perfect regardless of where each and every one of you are on your exercise and physical activity journey. Another aspect to our conversation is not only the physical benefits of what we put into our body, nourishes us, fuels us, but also how food and nutrition play a role in our emotional well-being and vice versa. We'll talk briefly on that as well. We're going to cover as much as we can in this wellness brief. There's a lot more we could talk about, of course. With that, Dena, I want to thank you so much for being with me on the podcast, lending your expertise to the topic as well as to each of us in the audience. Welcome, and let's get started.
Sounds great. I'm super excited to be here.
Okay, I'm going to go with a broader question.
Okay.
To start us off. What are the essential components of a balanced diet for, and I'm going to use the word active people, given what we just mentioned a moment ago?
Yeah, sure. So I think that's a kind of a good starting place. So, it really is going to be the same basic guidelines, whether you're active, whether you're an athlete, whether you're sedentary, but I kind of like to think about starting with the basics. There are 3 macronutrients in the diet. So you've probably heard people talk about macros. And those macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. They're all important. They all play different roles. So generally, those carbohydrates are going to be the bulk of the diet for most people. Carbs are really your main energy source. They're going to provide you with that quick energy. So when we think about carbohydrates, we want to think about, for the most part, choosing carbohydrates that are those whole grains. So we're thinking wheat bread instead of white bread, whole grain pasta instead of white pasta, that kind of thing. Those whole grains are going to give us more fiber, more vitamins, more minerals. They're just more nutrient dense compared to those refined grains. So those are really going to be, the best choices and really kind of the bulk of the diet. Again, most people should be getting at least like 50%-ish of their diet from those carbohydrates. So protein is going to be the next one I'm going to talk about. Protein, also really important macronutrient. I think most people probably, when they think of protein, they think about muscle, they think about building muscle, maintaining muscle. That is all really true. Protein is really especially important if you're trying to lose weight. And when you say lose weight, what people really mean is lose body fat, right? Nobody wants to lose muscle. So if you're trying to lose body fat, protein becomes really important because it can help preserve the lean muscle you already have. It also helps keep you feeling satiated. So it keeps you satisfied longer. And I think we can probably all think of a time where I know for myself, like I've eaten something like a donut or a pastry, which is really a protein poor choice. And it tastes great, but about an hour later, you're famished. And so that really speaks volumes of how much protein can help you feel satiated in the long run. And so then that last macronutrient is going to be fat. Fat is important for many reasons. It can help us to absorb fat soluble vitamins. It helps us of how much fat you use. Similar to carbohydrates, there's sort of these better choices. So we want to think about unsaturated fats. So things like olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, nuts, seeds, those are going to be our healthiest choices. Whereas saturated fats, which we find in animal foods like red meat, dairy, those are going to be our less healthy choices. So it's not to say we have to eliminate that completely, but we want to be aware of that. And we want to try to consume mostly unsaturated fats. And so in addition to those macronutrients, which are really important to understand, I also like to think about fruits and vegetables. So fruits and vegetables, low in calories, high in nutrients, contain fiber, phytochemicals, vitamins, minerals, super important to decreasing inflammation in the body, treating or preventing chronic diseases like cancer, like diabetes, like heart disease. And so ideally, we really want, a good portion of our plates to contain fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, most Americans are nowhere near the goal that we need to be in getting those fruits and vegetables. So really thinking about loading up on colors, loading up on variety. A question I get all the time is, okay, well, I'm, eating more vegetables, but I don't know how to cook them. Should they all be raw? How am I going to get the most nutrients? And truly, really, cooking is fine. Sauteing, steaming, roasting, all great options. Raw is fine too. I also like people to think about what they're going to consume more of. Okay, so for example, I love broccoli. Don't really love raw broccoli, but you saute it or roast it, and I can eat a lot of broccoli. So I want people to think about how they enjoy eating their foods too.
Enjoyment is very important in food selection.
Yes.
You took probably 3 or 4 chapters of a textbook and put it into a 5-minute overview. So kudos. That was very succinct, very easy to understand. And it's a great segue to the next question, because what you laid out, I'm going to say most adults, not everyone, most adults have heard, are somewhat aware of what you just shared. However, we could go into 50 different directions with this one. We don't have the time for that. So being mindful of maybe just some of the top ones. We know what we should be doing. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges, difficulties, barriers to, I would say, nutrition, generally speaking, healthier eating, but also certainly with when we talk about activity and exercise and physical activity?
Gosh, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest challenges for people is truly just time, right? We are, most of us are really busy. So it can be really challenging to figure out how to fuel ourselves properly given time constraints. So it's really common to not have a plan. And when you don't have a plan, it makes eating healthy really challenging. And I always like to use this example. I've been a dietitian for 2 decades. I fiercely believe in the importance of vitamins, minerals, nutrition, eating whole grains and eating the fruits and vegetables that I need. And I still have to have a plan or I can't do it. So it really comes down to making sure you're planning ahead. And what does that mean? I think it's different for different people. I can share what I kind of teach others, and that is truly just you sit down, you think about your week ahead, and you write out a plan. What's going to be your busiest day coming up? That should be your easiest meal. So what I do personally is I take usually a Sunday, I sit down, I look at my calendar, I think about my plan, I kind of write out the meals I'm going to consume that week. I go to the grocery store, I do some food prepping, I wash, I chop vegetables, fruits, so they are ready to go. I might make a salad dressing or make a marinade or, depending on what I'm going to eat that week. Now, what I will hear from people is, well, that is so much work. I don't have time for that. But you do. If you're busy, that you're who I'm talking to, because the busier you are, the more important this becomes. Setting aside a couple of hours on a weekend is going to save you so much time during the week. I can't even stress that enough. So, think about it. When you come home from work, or when you come home from taking your kids to, whatever, soccer or school, or whatever you have going on, would you rather come home, wash and chop all your vegetables, cook your rice, make your sauce? Or would you rather come home, open your fridge, see that your veggies are already chopped, your sauce is already made, and put your dinner together in, 15 minutes as opposed to an hour? I will say, make it enjoyable. On my Sundays where I do this washing and chopping and prepping, I turn on a podcast or an audiobook, and I just really sort of like enjoy that time.
I would definitely prefer the latter for sure. I'm going to guess that every one of our listeners agrees with that,
Yes.
especially after long days of work. And I 100% agree with your planning piece. It's the same with exercise. I'll tell you, it's even the same with sleep. When are you going to bed? When are you getting up in the morning? Behavior, you need to have strategy, and strategy can lead to goals, whether or not we get into we're not doing the goals today, but all of this can be built into goals, whether you enjoy goal setting or not. But definitely the strategy and the plan are so important. And to your point, you mentioned that you've been doing this for 20, oh, you've been probably doing it for longer anyway, but 20 years as officially as part of your profession. And people who run marathons have game plans, and people who have been exercising their entire lives have plans. Myself, I go in with a plan to the gym. And so that planning is key. And I do agree with you on that one. There is time. You decide how you're going to spend your time, but you can definitely carve out some time to do the planning. You just have to be purposeful about it. Yeah. All right. Now moving into, so these were great overviews to the topic. If we want to take it down to, and you were alluding to this a little bit, but let's say you're going to be exercising in the next 30 to 2 hours, 30 minutes to 2 hours, because certainly people eat at various times, and then exercise happens a little bit later, or activity, or workout, or however you want to call, whatever you want to call it. What would you say are some of the best food and or snack sources for that pre-workout meal?
Oh, that's a really good one. So I think it's going to depend on that timing, like you said. Okay, so if we're going to be working out and we've got, let's say, 30 minutes to an hour before a workout or so, you really want to think about a fuel source. So if you don't have a lot of time, you want to really focus on those carbohydrates. Remember, I said that's really your energy source. So when you consume fat and protein, that tends to sit in your stomach longer. It also isn't going to give you that quick energy. So I tell people to try to really focus on carbs if it's within an hour. And what does that look like? That might be, I really think that for me, like a banana is a great choice. That's just a really easy portable snack. It might be some pretzels. It might be some dry cereal for some people, but you really want to focus on those carbs, and you generally don't want to pack a lot of fiber, protein, or fat. It's just going to cause GI distress. Now, if you have more time, if you're talking, 2 hours, 3 hours before your workout, then you have the luxury of being able to really kind of combine all of those macronutrients I talked about. So that would be a good opportunity where you could have kind of a mini meal that would contain some carbohydrates, some protein, some fat, and that's going to keep you satiated and fueled for that workout later.
Those are great suggestions. And highlighting what you just mentioned, the closer you are to the exercise session, the workout session, those high carbs are going to be really important just for energy purposes. You have, as you mentioned, more luxury if you're eating earlier, you're spacing it a little bit differently than right before. So I appreciate that, those words of wisdom and
Yeah,
ideas and information. I'd like to shift to hydration.
sure.
Water and or hydration, people get confused on it and how much they should be consuming. And what is the best way for individuals to monitor their hydration levels? And this could be throughout the day, as I'm guessing you're very knowledgeable on just a daily intake of fluids, but then also around that exercise-ish session.
Yeah, and you're right. Hydration's, it's really important. When we're not hydrated, you're not able to perform as well. You don't feel as well. And it's going to look different for everyone. Obviously, the amount that you sweat is going to play a role. Your size, how active you are, the environment. As it gets hotter out, you generally sweat more. Are you doing activities like hot yoga where you're like dripping in sweat? Are you a sweater in general? Some people just are. So there isn't really like a guideline. I mean, I think we hear that 8 ounce glasses a lot, and that can be a good starting point for people, but you may need more than that. Also keeping in mind that some of the foods you eat contain water. So if you eat, watermelon and cantaloupe, and or you drink a smoothie or you drink milk, those are all going to count towards your hydration. One of the things, and this is going to sound so silly, but one of the things I think works really well is paying attention to the color of your urine. It should be a nice pale yellow. And so start paying attention to what that urine color looks like. And if you notice that it's dark, that could be a really good indication that you need more water. One of the other questions I get that it comes up kind of frequently is, does carbonated water count as water? And it does, absolutely. So if that's something you enjoy, you like bubbles in your water, absolutely fine. If you struggle to drink water, you really want something flavored, you can certainly use some of these flavored, bubbly, sparkling waters. You can certainly flavor your water with, actually, the other night I put some raspberries in my water just for fun. You could throw orange slices in there. Most people don't need like a sports drink or a special drink. That's not to say there isn't a place for them. There could be. But generally speaking, most of us don't need a special drink because we can consume enough electrolytes in our foods. So generally speaking, water, carbonated water is all going to count.
My children are going to love that. They love that carbonated water, whether they have one of those machines here at the house that they use, and then they we get it from the grocery store. So good. Awesome.
Yes.
I would like to talk just for a moment on the emotional, mental piece and stress. We're not going to get into anything beyond stress because that involves other conversations, but just talking about the daily stressors in our lives. How does stress impact our dietary choices? And even you can go on the opposite end of that, and dietary choices impact the stress on our bodies too. So you can answer it however you feel most comfortable, but definitely the two are related.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a big one for a lot of people. I mean, stress is definitely going to play a role in how we fuel our bodies and how we feel. And that looks different for different people. For some people, stress causes them to lose their appetite. For other people, it causes them to feel very hungry. And it could depend on the level of stress. If you're kind of mildly, slightly stressed, maybe you feel hungry, but if you're very, very stressed, maybe you lose your appetite. And there's lots of reasons for that. Certainly there are, stress hormones that can play a role in how we feel, and how hungry we are. But you kind of alluded to this. When you're stressed, it can affect your sleep, it can affect your exercise, it just makes life harder. So when you're stressed, it absolutely becomes more difficult to stick to those healthy habits. I've been there myself. I know for myself when I'm stressed, it is a lot harder to stick to those like normal healthy eating patterns. I often will like try to reach for foods that are not as nutritious. But I think what I try to keep in mind is I know that when I do that in the long run, I'm going to feel worse. So you kind of have to have that forethought where you're thinking, okay, not having the best week, I'm feeling super stressed. What am I going to do to take care of myself? And what that looks like for me is trying to eat those whole grains, those fruits and vegetables, making sure I pair my foods with protein. So you really want to try to like look at your situation holistically. Try to prioritize your sleep. Try to prioritize your nutrition. Try and prioritize your exercise if that's part of your life. I know that that's something that can kind of fall off when you're really stressed. But trying your best to stick to those healthy habits in the long run are going to help you most. I also think that, we talked a little bit about meal planning and having a plan. If you are having a week that's really stressful, making sure you do have a plan for that. Sometimes we know we're going to have a stressful week, right? I know that's not always the case. But if you know you're going to have a really busy, stressful week, try to plan ahead. Try to have your foods, prepped, chopped, ready to go so that you can, kind of stick to that plan and make your life, a little bit easier.
I really appreciate how you're framing this conversation without going down a few rabbit holes. Give yourself grace. Stop saying try. That's really like the thrust of the whole thing. We're not perfect. We're humans. We have off days and off weeks. And I like to joke, when you're stressed out, you're not grabbing the carrots and the broccoli. You're going for
Mhm.
comfort foods. And it's okay to do that.
Yep.
Trying, though, to still balance the day, the week, whatever it means to the person with some of the healthier items, and then giving yourself that grace to have maybe some things that are just going to comfort you in other ways. And so that
Absolutely.
try is so important, but it's not about perfection here.
Absolutely. And there is no perfection. What does that
No.
even
And
mean?
there shouldn't be, right?
Right.
We're humans. All right.
Exactly.
We're going to end it here with, we could keep talking and talking, but we do have to pause.
I
If
could
you
keep
have,
talking too.
I
I could go
know, right?
on and
And
on.
this conversation, people always love nutrition conversations. What, if you had to summarize maybe a couple of top ones, or I don't know if you have a top five or whatever it looks like from your end, what are just some of your top tips for eating a healthier diet for active people?
Great question. And I think I'm going to go with what's really important is trying to think about the way you eat as a pattern over time and not something transient. So I don't like the word diet because I think it does imply something temporary. What really is important for health and for preventing chronic diseases and staying fueled and staying active and feeling good are really these like long-term sustainable choices that we make. So, shifting from eating, refined carbohydrates to whole grains, trying to incorporate more fruits and vegetables, trying to do things that are sustainable for the long term. Instead of focusing on the way our bodies look, focusing on the way our bodies feel. I think we put especially as women, we put so much emphasis on nutrition and health being related to being thin and looking a certain way and not focusing enough on um, just eating for our health and for our long-term well-being, which is really the point of all of this. Um, and so even when you make some of these changes and these shifts, sometimes you might not notice, the scale moving, but I want people to also think about how they're feeling. And that can be really important too. And I think that's also motivating, right? So you make these changes and you feel good, and that helps you stay motivated to continue to make these healthy choices and these sustainable changes.
A lifestyle for sure.
Absolutely.
We are going to end here. We could talk for another hour or two. Dina, so appreciative of not only this conversation, because it was chock full of great information and strategies and ideas that I hope the listeners really take and reflect on, just your time and also your professional devotion to your career. And we're all in the health and wellness space, and it's so important, like you said, longevity and vitality and all that kind of stuff. So we just really appreciate your time and energy and expertise and knowledge on our podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having
Yes.
me.